On the night of April 14th, 1865, just 5 days after the Civil War ended, President Abraham Lincoln was shot in the head while watching the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. But this wasn't a random act. It was part of a coordinated conspiracy to throw the U.S. government into chaos. The assassin was John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln's bodyguard left his post that night to get a drink, leaving Booth with minimal resistance to get to the president. He knew the theater inside out. In fact, he timed Lincoln's shooting to a laugh line in the play, so the sound of the gunshot would be masked. After firing his pistol, Booth leapt onto the stage and yelled, "Sic semper tyrannis," Latin for, "thus always to tyrants." He broke his leg from the jump before managing to escape the city on horseback. It took 12 days, a manhunt across 5 states, and over 10,000 federal troops to track Booth down. He was eventually cornered in a barn in Virginia. When he refused to surrender, soldiers set the barn on fire. A Union sergeant eventually shot him. His last words? "Useless, useless." Booth didn't act alone. He and a network of conspirators planned to kill not just Lincoln, but Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward, all in the same night. The goal? Cripple the Union leadership and reignite the Confederate cause. Only Booth succeeded. Powell showed up at Seward's home pretending to deliver medicine to him, as he was bedridden from a recent carriage accident. Despite being stabbed in the face and neck 5 times, Seward survived, saved in part because of the metal neck brace he was wearing. Andrew Johnson was targeted by George Atzerodt, a German-born Confederate sympathizer. He was supposed to go to Johnson's hotel room and kill him, but instead, he got drunk at the bar downstairs and wandered the streets of D.C. all night. He never even made an attempt. All 3 attackers, Booth, Powell, and Atzerodt, were part of a broader conspiracy led by Booth himself. All were eventually captured. Powell and Atzerodt were both hanged, along with 2 others, including Mary Surratt, the first woman ever executed by the U.S. government. Lincoln's assassination wasn't just a tragic end to a president's life. It was a violent punctuation mark at the close of America's bloodiest war. On July 2, 1881, just 4 months into his presidency, James A. Garfield was shot inside a Washington, D.C. train station, not by a rival politician, but by a disgruntled office seeker named Charles J. Guiteau. Guiteau believed he was owed a government job, specifically an ambassadorship to Paris, for supporting Garfield's campaign. When he didn't get it, his delusion twisted into rage. He followed Garfield to the train station and shot him twice from behind. 1 bullet grazed the president's arm. The other lodged deep in his back, near the spine. Garfield didn't die immediately. In fact, he survived for 11 weeks, but what killed him wasn't the bullet. It was infection, made worse by doctors repeatedly probing the wound with unsterilized fingers and instruments. Incredibly, the actual bullet likely could have been safely left in place. Modern analysis suggests Garfield would have survived with proper hygiene and non-invasive care. But in 1881, germ theory was still widely dismissed by American doctors. In a bizarre twist, Alexander Graham Bell tried to locate the bullet using a homemade metal detector. It failed, not because the device didn't work, but because doctors only let him scan one side of Garfield's body. The bullet was in the other that wasn't examined. Guiteau showed no remorse, claiming, "I am a stalwart, and Arthur's president now." He was referencing Vice President Chester A. Arthur, who took office after Garfield's death on September 19, 1881. Guiteau was convicted and hanged the following year. Garfield's death wasn't just an assassination. It was a tragic turning point in American medicine. A brilliant man lost, not to bullets, but to the stubbornness of an era. On September 6, 1901, the 25th President of the United States, William McKinley, was shot, not by a foreign enemy, but by an American anarchist in broad daylight at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. McKinley was shaking hands with members of the public inside the Temple of Music, when Leon Czolgosz, a 28-year-old former steelworker and self-proclaimed anarchist, approached him with a concealed pistol hidden under a handkerchief. As McKinley extended his hand, Czolgosz fired 2 shots at point-blank range. 1 bullet grazed McKinley. The other pierced his stomach, hitting his kidney and lodging in his back. But here's the twist. It wasn't the bullets that killed him. It was infection. Doctors couldn't locate the bullet. Despite rudimentary surgery and early signs of recovery, gangrene set in. McKinley died 8 days later, on September 14th, making him the third U.S. president assassinated, after Lincoln and Garfield. Czolgosz, inspired by anarchist ideologies and the assassination of Italy's King Umberto the year prior, claimed McKinley was the enemy of the people. He was arrested on the spot, tried within a month, and executed by electric chair just 45 days after the shooting. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in, ushering in a new, progressive era in American politics. On November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in broad daylight in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas. As his motorcade slowly moved through the streets, shots rang out, hitting Kennedy in the neck and head. But who really shot JFK? Lee Harvey Oswald was ultimately arrested shortly after, but many believe he didn't act alone. Some argue that Oswald was a mere pawn in a larger conspiracy. Witnesses reported hearing shots from multiple directions, and some even saw a figure on the infamous grassy knoll near the scene. Just 3 weeks beforehand, JFK was nearly assassinated in Chicago. The would-be assassin was a man named Thomas Arthur Valley, a 24-year-old who had a history of mental health issues and had expressed strong anti-Kennedy sentiments. Valley wasn't involved in the Dallas assassination, but it was a strange occurrence that doesn't seem like coincidence. And what about the magic bullet theory? According to the Warren Commission, a single bullet struck both President Kennedy and Governor Connally in a seemingly impossible trajectory, entering Kennedy's back, exiting his throat, and then hitting Connally in the back, wrist, and thigh, before being found nearly pristine. Critics argue this bullet couldn't have caused such damage without significant deformation and question the bullet's path, leading many to believe there was a second gunman. This theory remains a focal point of conspiracy theories, casting doubt on the official story and fueling ongoing debates about whether Oswald acted alone. JFK's assassination sparked decades of conspiracy theories involving the CIA, Mafia, and even the Soviet Union. The mystery surrounding this historic incident is immense, but Lee Harvey Oswald was cast as the official executioner,